There is a ceiling above your income, and you put it there. Welcome to Quantum Wealth Lab. Not consciously, not on purpose. It was installed the first time you pulled back from something large because a quiet internal voice said, "Not yet, not this much, not quite you." Psychologist Gay Hendricks documented this pattern across decades of work with high performers and called it the upper limit problem. The moment things get good, genuinely, undeniably good, something in the subconscious activates a corrective mechanism. A self-generated sabotage that restores the familiar level. An argument that emerges from nowhere. An illness that arrives at the most inconvenient moment. A decision that seems reasonable at the time and costs you exactly the amount of progress you had just made. The upper limit is not a character flaw. It is a thermostat. Your subconscious has a set point for how much good you are allowed to have at once, and every time you exceed it, the system works to return you to the calibrated level. The thermostat does not care whether the calibrated level is adequate. It only cares about maintaining what is familiar. This session is a thermostat reset, not a motivational push to want more, a precise subconscious intervention at the level of the belief that installed the ceiling in the first place. The belief that this much is enough, that more than this would be too much, that the version of you who has significantly more is somehow not quite legitimate. You were not born with a cap. The cap was learned, and what was learned can be unlearned precisely at the level where it lives. Let's begin. You are uncapped, not as an aspiration, as a fact about the nature of your potential that was obscured, not eliminated, by the belief that there was a limit. The limit was never in you, it was in the story. Think about what it actually means to be uncapped. Not unlimited in the sense of fantasy, but genuinely without an internal mechanism that triggers self-correction every time you approach a new level of success. A version of you that receives a good month and simply experiences a good month, without the low-grade anxiety that something is about to go wrong, without the compulsive need to downplay or protect against the good by imagining its reversal. That version of you is not naive. They are not in denial about risk or effort or the realities of building something. They simply do not have a built-in ceiling that activates when things improve. Their subconscious reference point for how much good is allowed does not have an upper boundary. You can be that person, not by forcing it, by updating the belief that installed the boundary. The boundary is not structural. It is a learned response to an old set of data. The data of an earlier life in which staying small was safer, in which standing out was risky, in which having more than the people around you was socially complicated or emotionally costly. That data is outdated. This session replaces it. I am uncapped. The ceiling was never mine. I expand into what is actually available. Feel past the ceiling. Not by pretending the ceiling does not exist, by doing the unusual thing of gently pressing through it in imagination, the way you might press your hand through a membrane, and feeling what is on the other side. On the other side of your current upper limit is not chaos. It is not the devastating consequences your subconscious has been quietly predicting. It is simply more stability, more freedom of movement, more capacity to be generous with the people and causes you care about, more time operating from sufficiency rather than from the low-grade management of not quite enough. Feel into a specific number, an income level, a net worth figure, a quality of financial life that sits clearly above your current ceiling. Not a fantasy figure, but one that your subconscious would currently flag as too much, one that would make the thermostat nervous. Hold that number for a moment. Notice the response in your body, the subtle contraction, the impulse to qualify or hedge, the quiet voice that generates a reason why that figure would be complicated or inappropriate or not quite you. Now breathe through that response. The contraction is the ceiling revealing itself. It is information, not instruction. It is telling you exactly where the belief lives, and you are here, in this session, to update it. Abundance beyond the ceiling is not dangerous. It is simply unfamiliar. And unfamiliar becomes familiar through exactly this kind of repetition. The ceiling is already beginning to dissolve. Locate the ceiling by finding the belief beneath it. The upper limit is not free-floating. It is attached to a specific belief, a story the subconscious tells about why more than a certain amount would be problematic. These stories take a small number of recognizable forms. Some people carry the belief that having significantly more than the people they love would damage those relationships. That financial distance creates emotional distance. Some carry the belief that large success would invite scrutiny, judgment, or the specific kind of attention they spent years trying to avoid. Some carry the belief that more wealth would fundamentally change who they are, would make them someone they do not want to be. And some carry the most foundational version, the belief that they simply do not deserve more than a certain amount, that the level they are at is approximately correct given what they have done and who they are. Listen for your version, not with judgment, with curiosity. What is the story your ceiling is protecting? What is it trying to prevent? When you have a sense of it, even a partial, fuzzy sense, say this quietly and precisely: I see the belief. It was a protection. It is no longer needed. I release it. That is the action, not a dramatic overhaul. A single, clear release of the specific story that has been doing the limiting work. The ceiling loses its hold when you can name what it was protecting you from. The ceiling kept you safe once. That is worth acknowledging before you release it. The upper limit was not an enemy. It was a calibration system that was doing exactly what calibration systems do, maintaining a familiar level when the subconscious did not yet have evidence that more was survivable. In the environment where the ceiling was installed, that calibration may have been genuinely useful. Keeping a low financial profile in a community where standing out carried social cost. Managing the emotional complexity of having more than parents or siblings who struggled. Protecting against the vulnerability of large ambition and the possibility of visible failure. The ceiling was a solution. It solved a real problem in a specific context. Thank it for that, genuinely, without irony. The belief that maintained the limit was doing protective work, work that kept something in you safe during a period when safety was the priority. And now bring the gratitude fully forward. Gratitude for the version of you who outgrew the context in which the ceiling made sense. Who built, over years, the internal and external evidence that more is survivable, that expansion does not lead to the consequences the ceiling was protecting against. Who arrived at this session with enough stability, enough awareness, and enough trust to release what is no longer needed. Gratitude for the ceiling, and gratitude for the readiness to remove it. Both are true, both are honored here. You were never the exception to abundance. This is one of the quietest and most persistent forms of the upper limit belief. The sense that the expansive financial life is available to others, to people with different backgrounds, different timing, different something, but that you specifically are a special case, a near miss, someone for whom the normal rules of expansion do not quite apply. You are not the exception. You were never the exception. The universe does not maintain a list of people who are excluded from financial expansion on the basis of their history, their family of origin, their past mistakes, or the particular texture of their self-doubt. There is no clause in any law of attraction, any economic system, any spiritual framework that designates a specific category of person as permanently limited to a specific level of good. The exception story is the ceiling's last argument. When you begin to feel the ceiling dissolve, when the evidence starts to accumulate that more is actually possible for you, the ceiling generates the exception narrative as a final defense. It says, yes, but not you, not quite this much, not without a catch. Hear that voice, recognize it, and then say clearly, no, I am not the exception, I never was. Worthiness is not a competition with a limited number of winners. It is a condition of being alive and willing to receive. You meet both criteria. You are always included. Step into the version of you for whom the ceiling is already memory. This is not a distant future self. This is a version of you that exists one significant internal shift from where you are now. The version that made the update this session is installing and has been living from it long enough that the old limit is genuinely hard to remember as a real constraint. In this version, when things get good, you simply let them be good. There is no subconscious correction mechanism that fires at the scent of success. No inner voice that begins cataloging reasons why this will not last, or why it is too much, or why something is about to go wrong to restore the balance. The good month is simply a good month. The expansion is simply expansion. The arrival is simply arrival. Notice the quality of that life. Not the numbers, the quality. The texture of moving through financial decisions without the ceiling pressing down. The particular freedom of receiving a significant opportunity and feeling, for the first time, a clean and uncomplicated yes, without the reflexive hedge, without the unconscious downgrade of what you are willing to claim. That version of you is not fundamentally different from who you are now. They simply completed the update you are running in this session. You are already becoming them. The ceiling in their life is already memory. Let it begin to become memory in yours. Bring everything this session has moved into a single, settled knowing. You came in with a ceiling you may not have known you had. You are leaving with the awareness of exactly where it was, what belief installed it, what it was protecting, and what it costs you to keep it in place. The subconscious does not fully update in 14 minutes, but it updates at the margins and marginal updates, compounded across repeated sessions and daily identity reinforcement, become structural changes. The ceiling that has been holding your financial life to a specific level is already less solid than it was when you pressed play. That is the nature of the work. It moves things that were fixed. What you have installed in this session is a new reference point. A subconscious experience of pressing through the ceiling, of imagining the life beyond it, of naming the belief that maintained it and releasing that belief with gratitude. Your nervous system has now run a simulation of the uncapped version of you, and simulations, repeated often enough, become the baseline. Come back to this session. Run the simulation again. Let the ceiling become less familiar and the expansion become more so, until the day you notice, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a quiet, ordinary fact, that the ceiling is gone. It was never permanent, it was always a belief. And beliefs, when examined and consciously replaced, change. Until next time, keep expanding. Here is your practice for this week. Every time something good happens, a win, an unexpected income, an opportunity that arrives cleanly, notice your first internal response. Not the performed response, the real one. The one that fires in the half second before you decide how to feel about it. Is it uncomplicated pleasure? Or is there a trace of something else? A bracing, a qualification, a reaching for the reason this is not quite as good as it appears? That trace is the ceiling showing itself. And each time you notice it, say quietly, I see you. You are not needed here. I receive this fully. That practice, notice, name, receive, is the real-time application of what this session has installed. It is how the theoretical update becomes a behavioral change that compounds across the weeks and months ahead. And when you notice a moment this week where you caught the ceiling and chose expansion instead, come back to the comments and tell us. The community question for this week is, what is the most recent moment you noticed yourself pulling back from something good, and what happened when you let yourself receive it fully? Subscribe if this work is reaching somewhere real. Share it with someone whose ceiling is showing, someone who is close to the next level but keeps finding reasons to stay at this one. Until next time, keep expanding.